green-eyed brunette with olive skin, of German-Russian descent with Swedish roots. That's exactly how the girl who said goodbye to life on August 22, 2018, in Philadelphia, described herself. She was a Playboy, Maxim, and Victoria's Secret model, but apparently her beauty was a serious problem for someone. Help this channel grow. Like the video, try the new hype feature, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. Early on a summer morning in 2018, Christina slowly blinked and opened her eyes. Muted sunlight streamed into the room, and her head was pounding from it. The young woman tried with all her might to figure out where she was and how she had ended up there. Fighting the headache and confusion, she began examining the ceiling, the familiar walls, and finally the entire room. She realized she was in her own apartment, exactly where she was supposed to be, but something wasn't right. Christina only had fleeting memories of the previous night at a bar where she had stopped in for just a couple of drinks. She couldn't understand how she had gotten home. She couldn't have been that drunk to forget how a casual outing had ended. But thankfully, she was now home and completely safe. As soon as Christina got out of bed, something else caught her attention. While stumbling around her apartment trying to make sense of this strange morning, she realized that many things were missing. Her credit cards, designer handbags, and jewelry were gone. That's when it hit her. Her apartment had been burglarized, and that triggered an even more terrifying thought. Had she been drugged with something so strong that she passed out and didn't remember being robbed? Someone had deliberately broken into her space and stolen some of her most valuable possessions. What else might have happened while she was unconscious? Along with fear, Christina felt rage. Someone had entered the apartment she considered a safe place and rummaged through it while she lay unconscious in her bed. She had always felt protected in her apartment, but it turned out that wasn't the case. The feeling of fear and panic lingered for several days until Christina finally found the courage to go out into the city again. She was determined to move past this single incident, no matter how terrifying it seemed. She didn't want a burglar to lock her inside four walls. Yet just a few days after her apartment was robbed, Christina herself was found dead in that same bedroom. Christina Carlin Kraft lived in Ardmore, a suburb of Philadelphia with a rich history. Though not too far from downtown, the area had a sense of calm. Ardmore also had a lively nightlife, but it felt quieter and safer than the dangers of the big city. Safety and security were what convinced 36-year-old Christina and her fiancé Alex to move to Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Before moving to the sleepy suburb, the young woman's life had been anything but quiet and calm. Christina Carlin Kraft was born and raised in New Jersey. While some girls dreamed of a corner office on Wall Street, or a simple life with 2 kids, a loving husband, and a white picket fence, she imagined her beautiful face on the covers of the world's biggest magazines. And although the fashion and entertainment industry crushed the dreams and hopes of millions of young beauties, Christina had everything it took to succeed. Her light green eyes and cascades of dark chestnut hair turned heads, but she had more than just good looks. Her charisma helped her land her dream job, and Christina moved one step closer to the spotlight. Christina Rose Carlin Kraft was born on November 11, 1981, in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, to Stuart Kraft and Dawn Ann Carlin. She had 2 younger brothers and a sister. Their mother tragically died in 1990 when Christina was only 9 and her brother was 7. Her father remarried and had 2 more children, a boy and a girl. The age gap between the oldest and youngest sister was 19 years. The baby was born when Christina had finished high school and was working as a waitress at a casino on the Jersey Shore. Though that job was far from her dreams, it wasn't wasted experience. In mid-2003, the casino received a $1 million investment in hopes of turning it into a luxury resort and attracting crowds of tourists. Christina kept working there when she met the man who would later become the most important person in her life. He was a successful Wall Street banker named Alex Ciccatelli Jr. It was love at first sight. The young couple dove headfirst into a relationship that lasted 14 long years. It wasn't a typical romance. Christina had dreams and wouldn't stop at anything to achieve them. Fortunately, Alex supported her ambitions, and soon, the girl's persistence began to pay off. As a teenager, Christina had modeled several times for some of the world's most famous publications. One of her close friends was Eva. They met during a 3-day photo shoot for Maxim magazine. Both girls were chosen as winners of a modeling contest that featured contestants from around the world. Christina and Eva instantly became friends. After the feature shoot for Maxim, Christina's modeling career took off. Her name became well known in the industry, and she started getting invited to more prestigious shoots. She was living her dream, a loving man and a successful career. What more could she want? Yet there was one goal Christina could never quite reach. It was the pinnacle of a glamour model's career, the way to prove to the world you were worth something and leave your mark on the fashion industry. Carlin Kraft desperately wanted to appear in Playboy magazine. At the time, Playboy was an iconic brand. Its bunny head and bow tie logo is still one of the most recognizable trademarks in the world. The logo has been used since the 1950s, and many highly successful actresses and models started their careers by posing for Playboy. Pamela Anderson, Anna Nicole Smith, Jenny McCarthy, the list goes on. Christina was determined to follow in their footsteps. The only problem was that the chance to pose for Playboy came rarely, and the odds of landing a centerfold were practically zero. Playboy had long outgrown being just a men's magazine. It was a full-fledged business with its own clubs, perfume, and even clothing. And in 2005, a popular reality show appeared about the life of Playboy founder Hugh Hefner and his 3 girlfriends. Viewers got a rare glimpse inside the glamorous life, the legendary mansion, extravagant parties thrown for the rich and famous. Playboy had a reputation that went beyond just a company. It was a lifestyle with a certain allure. Christina was one of thousands of women who sent in their photos, praying for a chance at the golden ticket into Playboy's glittering world. Competition for a spot was brutal. You had to compete with countless other stunning girls to make it onto the magazine's pages. And one day it happened for Christina. She was singled out from thousands of others. They saw something special in her. In 2009, she got a call saying she had been chosen as Cyber Girl of the Week. That meant her photos would appear on Playboy's online subscription site, along with a short model bio. On May 4th, 2009, Christina got that opportunity, and she knew it was only the first step. Still, she was on cloud 9 because this shoot gave her an entry ticket into the exclusive Playboy world. Now she could attend all the trendy parties and mingle with Hollywood's most famous people, including Hugh Hefner himself. After all, that man would ultimately decide who got the coveted title. Though Christina posed for the online subscription site and was invited to glamorous parties at the mansion, she was still at the bottom of Playboy's hierarchy. Becoming a playmate meant appearing as a centerfold in the magazine, and only 12 girls a year got that chance. And only one of them received the grand prize, the title of Playmate of the Year, making her the brand's ambassador. Christina would have had a real shot at Playmate of the Year. Her Cyber Girl shoot was stunning. She had striking looks and personality. Only one obstacle stood in her way: age. She was 26 at the time. By most people's standards, she was young, but for a Playboy model, that age was practically ancient. Christina realized she wouldn't get the coveted title, and her time with Playboy ended as quickly as it had begun. The collapse of a dream can leave anyone feeling lost and unsure what to do next. Christina felt abandoned to fate, but she still went looking for a new direction in life. She had dreamed of being a model, and one rejection couldn't destroy those plans. She headed to New York. She went to castings and auditions and received positive feedback about her looks. But no one wanted to work with a model who had posed nude for Playboy. Christina never landed a job, so she decided to move with her fiancé into a luxury apartment he had rented for them near Philadelphia in Ardmore, which had a gym, spacious rooms, and modern appliances. A few minutes' walk away were several pubs and cafes. Unfortunately, Alex was busy with work in New York and couldn't often be with his fiancée. He knew Christina was safe in that apartment, so he left her alone without worry. On Tuesday, August 21st, 2018, Alex left the Ardmore apartment and went to New York for an overnight stay, which was routine for him. He called Christina late that evening to say goodnight, but she didn't answer. That didn't worry him. Alex knew that without him she felt lonely and might go for a walk around town or stop at a restaurant. Night smoothly turned into morning, and Alex still couldn't reach Christina. He called and texted, no reply. Morning turned into day with no response. That's when anxiety settled in his heart. Driven by that feeling, he wrapped up work and rushed to the Ardmore apartment. As he put his key in the lock and pushed, the door wouldn't budge. The key just spun. The lock wouldn't open. Her fiancé thought the apartment must be bolted from the inside. He called his girlfriend again, but Christina still didn't answer calls or messages. Then Alex called the police. It was Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018, 8:55 p.m., when the police department received a request to check on the welfare of an apartment resident. Alex expressed concern for his fiancée, Christina Carlin Kraft, explained that he couldn't open the door, and asked them to come urgently. As soon as the officers learned the call was from wealthy Ardmore, they weren't in a hurry. Residents there were known for calling police over the slightest inconvenience. But once Alex gave the exact address, the detectives sprang into action. They had already heard about a recent burglary at that apartment. What if the thief had come back and the burglary had turned into something far more sinister? So the officers wasted no time and rushed to the scene. At the apartment door, they met a distraught Alex, who gave permission to break in. The detectives agreed the situation required immediate action. Using a crowbar, they quickly forced the lock and entered. Opening the front door felt like opening Pandora's box. The moment they stepped inside, they were hit with signs of a horrific, bloody crime. They came face to face with death. None of them expected to see anything like this. Somehow, pushing through the chaos of the living room, the detectives headed to the bedroom and found the worst of it. In the middle of overturned furniture and clothes scattered everywhere was a huge pool of blood and a sheet on the floor. The investigators approached the sheet and already knew what they would find. Carefully lifting a corner, they saw Christina. She lay lifeless on the floor, completely still, her beautiful face mutilated beyond recognition. It was a horrific picture of cuts and bruises. Her hair and head were soaked in blood, and fear was frozen in her eyes. Those stunning green eyes that once captivated adoring fans were now dark and glassy. The brutal attack hadn't spared her delicate nose. It was crushed inward. Judging by the extent of Christina's injuries, it was clear the person who did this was consumed by intense rage. But why would anyone want to harm and kill a joyful girl with a beautiful soul and body? Who could she have crossed in this quiet, peaceful place? Naturally, the fiancé was the first suspect. When the detectives came out and told Alex his fiancée was dead, he collapsed to his knees in shock. He desperately needed answers, but maybe it was all just an act. The percentage of crimes committed by a partner is very high, and almost all of them initially feign grief until evidence turns up against them. Police cordoned off the building with yellow tape, collected surveillance footage from local businesses, and interviewed neighbors. Alex was immediately taken to the station for questioning. It quickly became clear he had absolutely nothing to do with his girlfriend's death. He had been in New York. Alex wasn't faking his pain. He was genuinely devastated by the sudden loss of the woman he loved. With the primary suspect cleared, police turned to the second potential perpetrator, the person responsible for robbing Christina just days before her death. After waking up early and discovering she'd been robbed, Carlin Kraft had filed a police report. When the second crime occurred at the same address, detectives were still investigating the burglary. They reviewed surveillance footage they believed could lead to the thief. Christina had said that on August 17th, she went to a bar downtown. But she couldn't remember what happened next. One very important detail should be noted. Statistics show a huge percentage of people aged 18 to 24 have witnessed someone spiking their own or someone else's drink in city bars, and most victims never report it. It's quite possible Christina Carlin Kraft had also been given something in her drink. Detectives decided to track how Christina got back to the apartment on camera. It turned out a taxi driver had picked her up from the bar at 3 a.m. He was a black man with facial hair, small mustache and neatly trimmed beard. He was driving a maroon Kia Sorento with Virginia plates captured by traffic cameras. He appeared to be about 30 years old. Footage showed Christina unconscious on the back seat. The taxi driver took keys from her purse and went up to the apartment. He spent over an hour inside before leaving the building with a heavy box. He then woke Christina, supported her by the waist, and walked her home. After that, he grabbed more boxes near the elevator, got in his car, and drove off. Police released the driver's image from surveillance footage, hoping someone would recognize him. Meanwhile, detectives began digging into the details of Christina Carlin Kraft's life, looking for clues in her past. First, they checked her online activity and came across a 2016 New York Times article. It reported that Carlin Kraft had gotten into an argument with a Manhattan restaurant manager over her bar tab. The dispute escalated so much that police were called because Christina allegedly punched the man in the neck and then kicked him in the groin. She tried to blame the manager, but video showed she was lying and heavily intoxicated. She was arrested and charged with assault. Alex explained that afterward, he and his fiancée went to court and made a deal with the prosecutor to drop all charges on the condition that no similar incidents occurred within 6 months. A year later, they moved to Philadelphia. Alex wanted to protect his girl and felt she would be safer in Ardmore than in the city. Though Christina's life in the new place was comfortable, she missed the city buzz and struggled to adjust to the quiet suburb. She missed company and socializing because Alex was gone for days or weeks at a time for work, so she occasionally went downtown to shop and eat out. Then, of course, detectives discovered Christina's Playboy debut as Cyber Girl of the Week, and the media quickly latched onto that angle. Her untimely death became national news with heavy emphasis on her Playboy history, even though it was only a small part of Carlin Kraft's modeling life. She was active on social media, and investigators also found her profile on a site where models showcased their work and posted short resumes. That's where Christina described herself as a green-eyed brunette with olive skin, of German-Russian descent with Swedish roots. She mentioned runway shows, print ads for jewelry and evening gowns, and modeling for Playboy, Maxim, and Victoria's Secret. No leads turned up in Christina's past, unless some crazed fan had killed her. But according to Alex, there were no obsessive people among her acquaintances. Earlier, detectives had traced activity on the stolen credit cards. They had been used at nearby stores the very night they were taken. It was the same taxi driver, as confirmed by store surveillance footage. Fortunately, police were able to identify him because he had prior arrests. His name was Andrea Melton. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and an arrest warrant for burglary early on the morning of August 22nd, just hours before Christina's body was found. Thousands of dollars worth of items stolen from Carlin Kraft's apartment were indeed recovered from his home, including designer bags, jewelry, keys, and even the title to a BMW. But unfortunately, Andrea himself was nowhere to be found. Detectives theorized that since this man knew exactly where Christina lived and how to get in, he might have returned to eliminate a witness who could identify him. The burglary investigation became far more urgent because now it involved a much more serious crime. Meanwhile, Christina's autopsy report showed several broken facial bones, but the cause of death was determined to be ligature strangulation. The killer had used something like a cord or rope as the weapon. While investigators pored over hours of surveillance footage frame by frame, they found something. Early on the morning before the tragedy, Christina left the building alone. She appeared again on camera, walking unsteadily back home around 3 a.m. But this time, she wasn't alone. She was arm in arm with an unknown man. He had the same skin tone as Andrea, similar height and age. He wore a leather jacket and white jeans, with a white bandana on his head. But it wasn't Andrea. It was a different man. Carlin Kraft and the stranger entered the apartment building together. The security system recorded when the apartment door opened, but it never opened again after that. However, at 5:19 a.m., the balcony sliding door was recorded opening. Christina's apartment was on the first floor, but elevated to second-floor height. Investigators believed the killer could have escaped by jumping over the balcony railing. The height made it easy. Whatever happened, after those two entered the building, one person died, and the other became the subject of a nationwide manhunt. The footage was very clear thanks to the building's high-tech surveillance system. Police were able to print stills of the man escorting Christina that night and distribute them to the media, hoping someone would recognize him. Detectives still didn't know if there was any connection between the man on video and Andrea Melton. Meanwhile, more and more news outlets broadcast the sordid story of the Playboy model killed in her luxury apartment. Headlines screamed only about her past with the famous magazine, forgetting that besides that, she was also an ordinary person with her own weaknesses and desires. But it did have one positive effect. On August 23rd, just one day after the tragedy, the lead detective received a phone call. It was Andrea Melton, who had seen his own photo in the news linked to the popular model's death. Andrea wanted to clear things up. He admitted he had robbed Carlin Kraft's apartment, but had nothing to do with her murder. He wasn't planning to turn himself in and be blamed for something he didn't do. Of course, no one took Andrea at his word. They kept looking for him as well as the second man caught on camera. They suspected Andrea might have given Christina's address to a friend who, for some reason, carried out the killing. Soon police got a tip from a key witness, a taxi driver who said he had picked up the girl and the man shown in the news photos that night. He got the impression they were romantically involved. Neither looked upset or scared. They were laughing and chatting sweetly. Christina hadn't used a ride-sharing app. She simply asked the driver to take them home because some guys on the street were harassing her. She promised to pay cash once they got to Ardmore. But when it was time to pay, she said she had no cash on her. The second passenger offered the driver $100 if he'd wait 15 minutes outside. The stranger said he'd walk her to the door, make sure she was safe, and come right back. It wasn't a great situation, and the driver knew he might get stiffed, but he felt he had no choice since he'd taken the fare without the app. He waited outside the building and after half an hour realized no one was coming to pay him and drove off. This information clarified the picture a bit, but police still didn't know the name of the man Christina was with that night. Then on August 26th, another caller claimed to recognize the wanted man as his former psychiatric ward neighbor. A few days earlier, they had been in a Philadelphia psychiatric clinic together. The mystery man had been admitted after kicking a woman. He was ordered to undergo a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. The caller told detectives about a disturbing conversation he'd had with the suspect. The man bragged that he had strangled a woman to death, and that there was nothing better than squeezing someone's throat and watching the life leave their body. It was clear this person might be directly connected to Carlin Kraft's death and needed to be stopped before he hurt anyone else. But police were disappointed again. The suspect had been admitted as John Doe, an unknown person. His real name wasn't in any paperwork. And when detectives arrived at the clinic, the man had already been discharged. 4 days had passed since the investigation began. Detectives worked late, considering every possible scenario, but the case was still at a dead end. They hadn't even managed to arrest Andrea Melton, who had robbed Carlin Kraft's apartment. Christina's family desperately needed answers. Not only had they lost a loved one, but the media was trying to portray the girl in a bad light. Relatives wanted the public to know Christina as more than just a Playboy model. They talked about how kind, generous, and caring she was. Reporters, however, latched onto only the loud and compromising facts of her biography. But every person has both good and bad traits. On August 29th, the funeral was held. The body of 36-year-old Christina Carlin Kraft was brought to New Jersey, where she grew up. That same day, police received another call. A woman identifying herself as the suspect's sister gave his name, Jonathan Wesley Harris. She said he was 31 and had prior convictions for robbery and drug distribution. He had been released from prison just 5 weeks before Christina's death. Now all that remained was to find him. He had gone on the run. Police interviewed friends, acquaintances, family members, everyone who might know Jonathan Harris's whereabouts. Eventually, they learned the suspect had left Philadelphia on a bus headed to Pittsburgh. Detectives contacted Pittsburgh authorities and warned them a potential killer was heading their way. He was violent and dangerous and needed to be apprehended as soon as possible. Pittsburgh officers quickly formed a task force and went to the bus station to try to intercept him. They had an approximate arrival time, so they surrounded the terminal and blocked all exits so the suspect couldn't escape. When the bus pulled in, the task force identified Jonathan Harris among the passengers using his photo and successfully arrested him. During the arrest, he tried to give police a fake name. Now, all that was left for detectives was to find out what happened in those few short hours between Harris and Carlin Kraft after they entered the apartment. Jonathan was shown a photo of the girl and asked how he knew her. He claimed they struck up a conversation at a local bar. Christina complained to her new acquaintance about how lonely she was in the suburbs and how she missed the party atmosphere and socializing. Harris said they were both under the influence of alcohol and drugs, so they decided to go to Christina's apartment to continue hanging out. Jonathan said that night he had given her cocaine on the condition that she pay him once they got to her place. Once inside, they drank a couple bottles of wine and then had consensual sex. When Harris was about to leave and demanded payment for the drugs they had used, Christina refused to pay. The amount was significant, $1,200, and after the refusal, a verbal argument broke out. Christina grabbed a wine bottle and smashed it over his head while he was naked. Blood poured from his ear, and she kept screaming for him to get out. Jonathan lost control and slapped her. She fell to the floor and passed out. But according to Harris, she was alive when he left, just very drunk. The story might have seemed plausible, if not for several inconsistencies. First, the toxicology report showed alcohol in Christina's blood, but no trace of illegal drugs. Second, if Jonathan hadn't killed her, who had that same night after their fight? Detectives made it clear to Harris they didn't believe him and left him alone in the interrogation room to think about what was coming. The realization that he could spend the rest of his life behind bars made him change his story a bit. Those few minutes alone clearly stirred something in him, because when the investigators returned, Jonathan told a version much closer to the truth. Harris admitted that he and Christina had gotten into a physical fight over money. He expected cash, but she thought sex was payment enough for the drugs. After he hit her in the face, Christina quickly regained consciousness and started screaming. Jonathan tried to calm her, but she kept shrieking. To quiet her, he punched her in the chest and then tied her up with pajama pants. Harris claimed he didn't want to hurt her. He just wanted to leave. Seeing fear in the helpless, naked woman's eyes, he untied her and begged her to be quiet. Christina agreed, but the moment she was free, she jumped off the bed and tried to run to the front door. Harris grabbed her and threw her back onto the bed, and then something animalistic took over him. He started punching her in the face over and over, intending to knock her out. When she went still, he rummaged through her things looking for money but found nothing. Christina started breathing strangely and asked him to bring her phone. She said she was okay and needed to call her dad. but instead tried to dial 911. Jonathan panicked, snatched the phone, and squeezed Christina's neck with all his strength. He assured police he saw her still breathing after that, but no longer resisting. Then he covered her body with a sheet so he wouldn't have to see what he'd done. He changed into clothes he found in the closet because his white pants were soaked in blood, and he left through the balcony door so he wouldn't be caught on camera, just as investigators had suspected. No matter how brutal the crime, Jonathan insisted he never meant to hurt Christina. He said he panicked, was scared, didn't know what to do. That's why he covered her with the sheet so he wouldn't see her battered face. He knew she was in a lot of pain and badly injured, but heavy drugs had clouded his mind at the time. Jonathan Harris confessed to killing Christina but pleaded not guilty. He claimed it was all unintentional. Later, his lawyers didn't deny that their client had strangled Carlin Kraft to death, but argued it was accidental. The defense asked the jury to convict him of third-degree murder, which would carry a much lighter sentence. However, his bragging to the psychiatric ward neighbor completely contradicted his claims and showed that Harris enjoyed taking a life. He could have stopped the attack. He had plenty of time to calm down. He could have left her tied up or simply fled after she first lost consciousness. He could have turned himself in when he became wanted. He could have made a different choice that wouldn't have stolen a young woman's life and left her family in grief and despair. But instead, he chose to run. The jury must have felt the same as Christina's family because they found Harris guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Christina's fiancé, Alex, addressed Jonathan in court, calling him a coward and saying that he not only took the life of a kind, loving, amazing person everyone misses terribly, he caused unnecessary pain to those who loved her, all for no reason. Moreover, he continued to slander Christina's name even after her death by claiming she used drugs. Alex had lived with her for 14 years and knew her better than anyone. It's impossible to imagine what that girl went through. She missed her old lifestyle and wanted the feeling of parties, crowds, and connection. That night she met the wrong man and had no idea what he was capable of. Jonathan Harris was an extremely dangerous person and should never have been released from the psychiatric hospital. He clearly deserves to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Christina Carlin Kraft was more than just a model. She was a driven, ambitious young woman who drew people in with her charisma and personality. She loved her family and adored animals. As her father, Stuart Kraft, said, she was the brightest ray of light. And though her life was cut short, the warmth from that light lives on in the hearts of everyone who loved her. If you have finished watching, you are a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications, and put the like. See you in the next video.